Le Mans 1966. This wasn't just a Ferrari loss, it was a turning point. Three Ford GT40S crossed the finish line together. Ferrari's cars nowhere near the podium. So how did a brutally overbuilt American V8 end up humiliating the most feared name in motorsport? 4. Why the side oiler still matters. Most race engines are remembered for how fast they were, but this one is remembered for survival. While others chased lap records, the side oiler was built to survive heat, abuse, and long hours of punishment. And that difference of survival over speed is exactly why people still talk about it today. So why does an engine from the 1960s still command respect? Because the side oiler didn't win by dominating lap times, it won by refusing to fail. Not once, or not when it mattered most. And that changed endurance racing forever. Before this engine, reliability was something teams hoped for. You crossed your fingers, managed the throttle, prayed nothing overheated at 3 a.m. After the side oiler, reliability became something teams designed into the engine from day one. And it starts with that oiling system. Ford didn't route oil where it was convenient, they routed it where engines actually die. Straight to the crank and to the main bearings. No drama. Bearings before everything. Yeah, that's not romantic, but it works. The block itself was overbuilt, with thick cylinder walls and cross-bolted mains. Was it heavy? Absolutely. But stable, predictable, and unbreakable under sustained RPM. Modern endurance engines still follow this exact thinking. Oil control first, bearing protection first, thermal stability, always. Different materials, different tech, but the same philosophy. But here's the part people forget. That lesson didn't come from Europe. It came from an American V8 that was built to last longer than everything else on the track. And that's why the side oiler still matters. Up to this point, the side oiler sounds strong on paper, but endurance racing isn't decided on paper. And that's where the side oiler really separates itself. But that wasn't the end of it. What most people don't realize is this. Ferrari didn't just lose Le Mans in 1966. Something happened after the race that stayed with him for years. And it wasn't written in lap times, or results, or trophies. It showed up in what he didn't say. 3. What happens after hours of running? In long races, engines don't usually fail all at once. They wear down slowly. Oil gets thinner, clearances change, and heat builds where it shouldn't. That's when small design choices start to matter more than horsepower. So what happens when an engine keeps its oil stable and its internals supported, hour after hour? With the side oiler, the engine doesn't slowly drift out of its comfort zone. It stays closer to the way it felt at the start, because the crank and bearings are always fed properly and they don't heat up unevenly. That means less distortion, less friction, building over time, and less power loss as the race goes on. The block helps here too. Since it's rigid, parts stay aligned even when temperatures rise. So instead of the engine feeling sharp early and tired later, it feels consistent. At Le Mans, that consistency is everything. Lap times don't suddenly fall off, and drivers don't need to compensate. The car stays predictable deep into the race. And that's the real advantage. Not speed, but the fact that the engine doesn't slowly turn against itself as the hours pass. That's when other engines start asking for mercy. The side oiler doesn't. So the side oiler wasn't winning because it was lucky, and it wasn't winning because others made mistakes. It was winning because Ford and Ferrari were solving two different problems. And Ferrari didn't realize that difference until the race was already slipping away. 2. The assumption Ferrari built around. Ferrari had been winning Le Mans for years. Their engines were fast, refined, and built by people who understood racing deeply. They weren't careless designs, they were specific designs. So what did Ferrari assume that Ford didn't? Ferrari treated the engine like something you worked with. It needed attention and monitoring, and during a long race, the team and the driver adjusted around it as things changed. That wasn't careless because that was how racing worked back then. And for a long time, it worked for Ferrari. Ford didn't think about the engine that way. They stepped back and made a different assumption. They assumed the engine wouldn't get special care, that it would be pushed hard, run flat, left alone for long stretches of time, because in a 24-hour race, that's what really happens. So instead of building an engine that needed constant involvement, they built one that didn't ask for it. And that shift changed everything. Ferrari engines expected participation. They responded best when someone was always paying attention. The side oiler didn't expect that. It expected pressure, time, and repetition. And when those two ideas met on the same track, over the same 24 hours, one of them was always going to make it to the end. So by this point, it wasn't just about whose engine was better. That part was already settled on the track. What mattered now was what this loss meant. Because for Ferrari, this wasn't just another race. This one hit somewhere else. 1. The day Ferrari stopped talking. Enzo Ferrari didn't just build cars, he built his name around winning, and Le Mans was his place. That's where people expected Ferrari to be untouchable. So what happens when someone breaks that image in front of everyone? After Le Mans 1966, something unusual stood out, and it wasn't just the result of the race. Enzo Ferrari didn't respond the way people expected him to. There was no public argument, no long explanation, no attempt to shift blame or challenge what had happened. For someone who was known to speak openly and emotionally after wins and losses, that reaction, or lack of one, felt noticeable. Normally, Enzo Ferrari had something to say about the rules, about the drivers, or about the race itself. This time, he didn't. And that silence carried weight because the outcome of Le Mans that year didn't leave much room for interpretation. Ford finished the race with 3 cars together at the front, a result that was planned, visible, and impossible to overlook. It wasn't a narrow decision or a controversial moment that could be debated later. The finish showed exactly how the race had unfolded, and everyone watching understood what it meant. That's why this engine is remembered, not because of technical figures or performance charts, but because it played a role in a moment that spoke for itself. It created a result so clear that even one of racing's most outspoken figures had nothing to add. And in motorsport, that kind of silence is rare. The Ford 427 side oiler didn't win Le Mans by being flashy. It just did its job, lap after lap, until there was nothing left to argue about. And in 1966, that was enough to change how endurance racing was seen forever. If this made you see engines or racing differently, drop a like and subscribe. We break down moments like this every week where small decisions rewrite history. Got another engine or race we should cover? Comment below. And if you want more context, check out our other breakdown on the channel. You'll see how these stories connect.